Hello once again, everyone. Welcome back. First video since Christmas here on my main channel, and I figured what better video to do than a discussion slash review, I suppose, of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Because I saw the new Star Wars movie already. I saw it, when was that? Last Wednesday, was it? I believe so. So, again, right off the bat, though, don't worry. If first of all, if you haven't seen this movie and you are going to, or you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't seen it yet, whatever, and you're like, oh, spoilers, spoilers. Why the fuck, first of all, are you watching this? Second of all, I will warn you right now, stop watching because what I say from now on will be spoilers, most likely. Well, it will. And since there's always the people who ignore the warnings of you could have said spoilers, even if people do, I will be generous enough to give you a third and final warning. This is a spoiler video. Only watch this if you have seen the movie, or maybe you're just not a Star Wars fan and you don't even care to see the movie, so you don't care if I spoil stuff for you. Either way, last warning, remember, spoilers ahead. Do not watch if you don't want to hear this. Okay, so without further ado, let's discuss episode 7. Let's start off with my overall feelings after the movie was done. Did I like it? Did I hate it? Did I think, it was okay? I'll be brutally honest. Actually, before we get into that, I should point out, even though I'm a big Star Wars fan, I'm not a mega Star Wars fan. And, a lot of people bash the prequels to Star Wars 1, 2, and 3. I have no problem with them. A lot of people hated Jar Jar Binks. I didn't. To me, he was the Navi of Star Wars. Navi from Ocarina of Time. The hey, listen. The annoying one, the lovable or the lovable annoying character. Now, speaking of Jar Jar Binks, that's where we can start our discussion here. Because I had heard, before I'd seen the movie, that they brought Jar Jar Binks back, and I was excited, and a lot of people were cranky about it. I watched the movie, and lo and behold, no fucking Jar Jar Binks anywhere to be seen. That kind of ticked me off. After a little research, apparently they were going to bring him back, but then after all the backlash of everyone hating on him, or a majority of people hating on him, they decided to scrap the idea. So, uh, not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. But the movie itself, overall, I did enjoy. Special effects, of course, were top of the line, fantastic. And I should point out that I saw it in 3D. So there was that. There was a one scene where there's a fucking star destroyer flying towards the camera, and I swear to goodness, it looks like the 3D effect on it was amazing. I felt like I could just reach out and pick it up in my hand and shake it around. I hadn't seen good 3D effects like that since the Spy Kids 3D movie way back when. But either way, where was I here? Oh yes. So I enjoyed the movie. Do I think it's it's the best Star Wars movie that there is? No. I would still say the originals, meaning 4, 5, and 6, are probably a bit better. I would give Episode 7 a 7.5 out of 10. So it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. But I did have a few uh, issues with the movie. Now remember, there's going to be spoilers here, so let's. I mean, fuck that. I've already warned you about spoilers, so whatever. Where do I even begin with some of the issues? Let's start with C3PO. When he shows up, randomly, one of his arms, his left arm, I believe, is red. No explanation for why that is, other than C3PO saying, I forget what he said, something along the lines of, uh, Master Solo, do you like the change I've had, or something like that, where he clarifies that he has a changed arm, or a changed appearance, but they don't actually say a damn thing about why. So, I assume eventually that'll be told, maybe in episode 8, but it was completely and utterly pointless. I mean, they could have had in episode 7, if they wanted to change an arm, they could have had him have his normal one, and then he gets shot or something, and his arm gets destroyed, and then they had to put a new one on in episode 8, and then that explains it. But this was just random as fuck. There was R2D2, of course, which he did nothing for 99.5% of the movie. He was just inactive because Luke abandoned him. And by the way, story wise, Luke, he is another. he's both a win and a fail I have for the movie, and I'll explain that in a second because Luke is, Mark Hamill is the man. I'm a huge fan of him as Joker, as Luke, whatever. But at the very end of the movie, well, I should say the whole story is Luke. Uh, you know, he was the only Jedi left. He started to train new Jedi. He was training Han Solo and Princess Leia's daughter, not daughter, son, Kylo Ren, aka the new bad guy. He went to the dark side after he was swayed to the dark side by this new, I forget his name, Supreme Overlord, alien, whatever. He's not. I don't think he's a Sith. I don't think he's like the Emperor. I don't know what you'd call him. He's the First Order's top food chain boss, which is the new bad guy group, the Order. Um, Either way, so he was swayed to the dark side, and I believe they said he, killed all the other Jedi that Luke was training, all the kids or whatever. So Luke, I guess, feeling bad or didn't know how to accept it, he decided to go into seclusion and hide away somewhere on an island, just to kind of collect himself or whatever. He didn't tell anyone where he was, but he did leave kind of a trail of breadcrumbs to find him. There was a part on a data disk that gets put onto a droid. You've heard all this before if you've seen Star Wars, where the bad guys are like, "Oh, the precious information is on the droid. We got to chase the droid." It's like, well, there was a lot of scenes in this movie that you were like, "Hey, this is very, very similar to the other movies, just kind of with either different characters or it's flipped around." But anyway, back to Luke. You don't see Luke Skywalker until the last 60 seconds or so of the movie. When they finally get to him, and he's on an island, Rey, the girl, finds him and brings him his lightsaber, which that plays a big part of the movie as well. Where she earlier finds Luke's lightsaber, and formerly before him, it was Darth Vader's lightsaber, or Anakin, I should say, at this planet where some random alien lady has it. And they again, there's a problem right there. I have where the fuck did that come from? How did she come across it? I don't know. They don't explain that. Because when Luke lost it, it fell down the fucking pit when he had his hand cut off, and it was just gone. So, who knows? So I did like seeing Luke at the very end, and he's kept the beard, which I didn't know if he was going to do or not. Um, so now, basically, Luke at the end, he looks like the new old man Kenobi. But either way, at the end of the movie, she brings him his lightsaber. He looks at it, and then that's basically the end. Um, Prior to that, let's discuss other things here. Kylo Ren, Han's son. He is not anywhere near as intimidating as Darth Vader is. If you recall in the other movies, Vader, he would argue a little bit back and forth with the top command military guy who was in charge of the Death Star firing the weapon or whatever, and he did the death choke on him. Kylo Ren kind of has a similar comparison to the other military guy, but he doesn't fucking fear Kylo Ren at all. Um, and I don't know, that was kind of weird. Now let's talk Han Solo. Han randomly shows up when Rey and Finn, the black guy, black stormtrooper, get into the Millennium Falcon and steal it. They call it a pile of junk because at this time in the movie they don't believe that like the whole Jedi thing was even real. It's all a myth. And so they're flying through space trying to get away, and you know, lo and behold, Han Solo sucks them up into his newest ship, and he's like, "How did you get the Millennium Falcon?" And blah 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 blah. So he ends up getting it, and then Chewbacca's with him, of course. And typical Han went back to being, owing slime balls a bunch of money. So either way, and there was a scene there on their ship where they had like aliens on board. Really felt like Jurassic Park ish. But either way, that's not here nor there. So later on, Han Solo and uh, Leia talk, and she's like, "You have to bring our son to the good side. I can still sense, he's still got good in him." Blah 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 blah. And you can see where this is going, 100 miles away. It's basically, it's kind of flipped where. Before you had the father, Vader, trying to go after the son, Luke, who was trying to bring him to the dark side, and now you got the son, who's the bad guy, and the dad is the good guy trying to bring the son to the good side again. So long story short, Han eventually comes across Kylo Ren, and He talks to him on they're on this like little narrow bridge over a big fucking gap, which you're like, oh, this is symbolizing something. And so Han goes across and talks to Kylo. Kylo pulls this whole like, "Help me, Dad! I want to turn to the good side." Blah blah blah, and takes off his helmet and starts to hand over his lightsaber, his weird, funky one. Which, by the way, by the end of the movie, completely forgettable. That fancy little guard lightsaber, you didn't even need that in there. It just didn't need to happen. Anyway, so he stabs Han, and with the lightsaber, and Han is dead. He kills his father, and Han Solo is no more, and he falls off the bridge into basically a bottomless pit. Not really quite, but a really fucking far down hole. Very similar to when the Emperor fell down that fucking pit. But other than that, yeah, I will admit that was sad, even though I was spoiled going into the movie. I had read a comment accidentally saying, or not accidentally, but I accidentally saw a comment that said Han got stabbed by Kylo Ren. So that part was spoiled for me, so I saw it coming. I will say I was much more affected by Chewie's reaction, where he freaks out and he goes like, his sound effect. I can't do it very well, and then goes berserk and starts shooting stormtroopers left, right, and center. And speaking of Chewbacca, one stormtrooper actually fucking gets lucky and hits a target for once and shoots Chewbacca in the shoulder, but he doesn't get killed. He's just kind of wounded, and then he heals later on. It's fine. So good job, stormtrooper. You finally hit something. Anyway, Chewbacca was sad. That infected me. Like, that actually made me tear up a little bit. And Princess Leia, or well, she's just Leia now, I guess. She could feel in the Force that Han died or whatever, so she feels bad. Blah blah blah. Um, and I will say, at the end of the movie, I was surprised that there was no Han Solo ghost. You know how like Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin were there for Luke. Now, granted, you're like, but Han Solo's not a Jedi, and to you, I would say they always say the Force is in every living thing, including Han Solo. So, I would have thought it would have been nice. What else to talk about? There was some random things that didn't make sense where Finn was using Luke's lightsaber. He had no training whatsoever with a lightsaber, and he was fighting a stormtrooper who had this weird swivel stick weapon thing, and for some reason it would not get cut in half with the lightsaber, which did not make any sense. Um, Finn later fights Kylo Ren with Luke's lightsaber, gets his butt kicked. Uh, I thought Finn died, to be honest, because he gets slashed up the back, and but I guess he just got wounded because he lays there and then eventually gets carried away and is like, "Oh," Ray's like, "I'll see you again later." Blah blah blah. And then Ray uses the lightsaber of Luke. Oh, I should say at one point earlier on when she finally first sees that Luke's lightsaber and she reaches to touch it or whatever, she has like a strong vision thing that happens that shows a bunch of stuff. And so she fights Kylo, and with no former training at all, is able to go toe to toe with him, which just goes to show you how crappy Kylo Ren is. Like you can't take him seriously. He's like a weak little crybaby who just throws his lightsaber around and goes, "Wah, wah, wah, I want to smack you with my lightsaber because you're not doing what I want." Compared to Vader, Kylo Ren is a little bitch. Um, so, yeah. And also, that reminds me, who the fuck told Kylo Ren that Vader even existed? Because at one point, he looks at Darth Vader's helmet and he's just like, "I will continue your mission, blah, blah, blah." Because Kylo Ren was born after Darth Vader died. I cannot see Han Solo or Leia being like, "Oh, by the way, your father or your grandfather was evil." I can't see that happening. Maybe it was the evil overlord bad guy thing. Who knows? Other than that, what else was there? Anyway, Rey goes hand to hand, or evenly matched with Kylo Ren. I don't know if she was just miserable at trying to kill him, or she wasn't trying to kill him, but she like hit his leg, she poked him in the shoulder, she cut him up, or she cut him along the face. He didn't die. It was like 3 stabs with a fucking lightsaber, and he didn't die. He kept pounding away at himself. I kept thinking, I was like, are you like part robot? Are you like short circuiting or something? Like, what's wrong? Um, and then there's a big fissure in the ground, and then they get spread apart, and Rey runs away, and Kylo obviously gets away alive. Um, Also, there's a planetary Death Star in this movie. They just basically did Death Star 2.0. I don't need to waste time talking about that. Um, and what else? Rey also, you might remember in the old movies where Obi-Wan confuses the stormtroopers by saying, these are not the droids you are looking for. that basically was put into effect again here, except it was when Rey was captured by Kylo Ren and a stormtrooper was guarding her. She would say to him, like, "You will walk over here and unlock my shackles, and leave the door open and just leave." And then he walks over and he's just like, "I will not do that." And then so she tries again, doesn't work, tries again, and then eventually it works. And so he unlocks her, walks towards the door, and then she's like, "Oh, and you'll drop your weapon." And he's like, "And I will drop my weapon," and drops his blaster on the ground. So, I mean, that was a good part. That was kind of interesting. But, yeah. Um, what else? A lot of similarities, like I was saying. With Rey, she's like a scavenger on Jakku, which I thought we were on Tatooine here for the longest time, but very similar to Anakin. Even though Anakin was a slave and she's not, it's basically, horrible living conditions where you're barely getting by, and you're like trading in stuff to get any kind of currency or food or anything to survive. So, yeah. Is there anything else I'm missing? There probably is. Bum ba dum bum ba. I can't think of anything else. So, I feel like this is wrapping up really suddenly all of a sudden, but I have probably been talking for a fair amount of time. So I think that's going to about do it for my discussion slash review. Again, I give the movie 7.5 out of 10, and I say if you haven't seen it, but you want to see it, well, then you probably shouldn't have watched this video, unless you just don't care about spoilers. But otherwise, it's a good movie. Solid movie. Disney didn't ruin it, but there was definitely some plot holes that were kind of like, really? You didn't think how that was going to go? Or maybe they did, I don't know. Um, oh, and then I have a prediction I was going to say, wherein I believe with the ending of the movie where Rey gives Luke his lightsaber, I'm pretty sure that means Luke will train Rey properly to be able to use the Force and fight with the lightsaber. Although I don't know where if they're only going to use one lightsaber because Luke doesn't seem to have his because she had it. I don't know. But anyway, I bet Rey is going to kill Kylo Ren in Episode 8, and Luke will have to be the one that actually kills the new bad guy thing. Oh, and I forgot to mention the droid at the beginning, much like with R2D2 in the original movies. Why is it that it's always like, oh, the droid's got information, we gotta find the droid? But anyway, this little BB-8 unit, the little new robot, the soccer ball robot, had a data chip, I should say, that is what most of the movie was about, and it had information that had to get to the rebels to tell them where Luke was. It only had part of the map. And then at the end of the movie, when Han's dead and everything, R2D2 wakes up, and then he talks to C3PO, and he's like, "Oh, I do have information on Luke after all." And him and the other robot holographic, project their little map and combine them together, and then that's how they find Luke. But now I think I've talked long enough, and I've said way more than I needed to. Either way, 7.5 out of 10. Good movie. Not the best Star Wars, but definitely a good movie. And yeah, so as always, we'll see you in the next video.